NOLA Motorsports Park in Avondale, Louisiana, the place for speed. And this is Prep Recruiting Insider, the place to hear about all the best high school football players in the metro area and in the state and in the nation. And it's all right here on PRI, Prep Recruiting Insider from NOLA Motorsports Park. Hi, I'm Ro Brown. Thank you for joining us again on what I guess I can call this championship edition of Prep Recruiting Insider, because the state football championships are going on this weekend in the Superdome. It's the Superdome Classic. All 9 of them. That's right. You heard 9, not 5. This time it's 9. My partner, Renee Nato, is not with me this weekend, but to show you how important Renee Nato is, it takes 3 people to replace him. 3 really good people, though, you know. Let's start on the far end right there. He is a familiar face to everybody around here. J.J. McCleskey, New Orleans Saints. Let's go backwards. University of Tennessee, Arizona Cardinals, the whole works, and Prep football parent now, but you know, I'm sure you'll probably talk about that later. JJ, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And then right next to JJ is another familiar face, 15 years head coach at Hahnville High School, state title in 2003. He is Lou Valdin. Lou, it is good to have you here. You know, we got to have somebody that knows something about football besides, you know, the rest of us. So
that's why JJ is here.
No, that's why you're here too. And the guy to my immediate left, of course, is another familiar face, Mike Detillier, football analyst, analyzes everything. Everybody thinks about him with the NFL draft and all, but you will be surprised what Mike Detillier also knows about the guys who are playing football in high school, not just in college. Michael, good to have you here.
Pleasure to be with you, Ro. It's been a while since we've done some work together, but we go back a long way.
Yes, indeed,
when our
we
hair
do.
was much darker.
Yes,
and
yes.
we were a lot thinner.
Yes, yes. I go along with you on that. So what more can you ask for? J.J. McCleskey, Lou Valdin, Mike Detillier this week on Prep Recruiting Insider, the championship edition. When we come back, we'll start talking about some of the matchups and the players you'll see in the Superdome over the course of 3 days. Welcome back to Prep Recruiting Insider. I want to mention that Lou Valdin is here, and he serves kind of as our legend, our Ronnie Lamarck, legend of the game. You know Ronnie Lamarck, the legend down in St. Bernard Parish at Chalmette High School, and he is the sponsor of our legend of the game. We'll get to that a little bit later, and we'll mention that as the afternoon proceeds. Mike Detillier, Lou Valdin, J.J. McCleskey here with us. All right, let's get started. Start at the top, Class 5A. You know, 9 championships. Man, I thought 5 was tough, but 9 championships. Parkway, the number 2 seed taking on the number 1 seed, Acadiana. 13-0 Parkway, 13-1 Acadiana. This one should be a really good ball game because you got contrasting styles. You got one side that, you know, is a quarterback that can run and pass and the whole works, and then we know what Acadiana is. It's that.
I know.
You guys know.
And we've seen them play for the last 25 years. Ted Davidson been a great coach there, but they run the same system. And I hate to use that term system, but they run that system to perfection, Lou. You're well aware of it.
Okay, Lou, what is that system?
Split back there. They take those offensive linemen and they stand them up and they'll drop down in the stance, and a second later they're coming off the ball and they just knock you off the ball.
Now, is that legal?
Well, it's legal. They don't call anything.
They drop and they kind of lean a little bit. And, I know a lot of people gripe about that, but I think it's legal if you don't get caught.
I tell you, you don't even have to study film. You don't have to trade film with Acadiana. You know what they're going to do. They do it well and they execute, and they have a wonderful program. Great program.
Yep. Coach Davidson's run that system, and you know, with the Cormier brothers in the backfield now, I mean, they've been a big part of that 1,000-yard rushes for them. They've done a great job, but Lou's been well aware of kind of how they run it, and they want to beat you up, almost like Joe Frazier in boxing. They want to beat you up, and they keep your top guy off the field, and I think that's going to be the key in this game. How many times will Brandon Harris, who's going to LSU, how many times will he touch the football? Because the way that Acadiana runs the ball, he may not touch it a lot.
Well, that was the problem we had. We couldn't, you know, I had they had Allie Broussard, and we had LaRon Landry, and LaRon Landry's our quarterback, didn't get to play.
Yeah.
I mean, they just took the ball, and even against Dester here in the state championship, the first time they got the ball, they had a 9-minute drive.
And
so,
then they knocked Derek Isom out, and that was kind of end of the story.
It's, you know, if you're Parkway, and we played Parkway, we lost to them last year in the playoffs. They have an outstanding football team, and they were all back from last year. So I talked to David Feast after the game. I said, boy, you're the first team I'm going to look for in the bracket. I sure hope we're away from you. We knew they were going to be loaded, but you can't have any 3 and outs. You can't have a turnover. You better make the most of every possession you get. Because Acadiana, they're going to pound the rock and run the clock. That's their deal. 2
state titles for Acadiana in 2006 and 2010. They've only given up 38 points during the playoffs, and Parkway averages 48 points a game behind Brandon Harris, as you heard Mike mention. Class 3A, Livonia versus Union Parish. This one should be a good one. It is a 1 versus a 3. Livonia undefeated, 14-0. Union Parish, 13-1. Mike Detillier, what you looking for?
Man, with Livonia, this is the first time they're ever going to play an 11-man football state championship. Now, can you believe that? They've been to 2 6-man titles.
Yeah, I was going
and
to say, you need to explain to people what
titles.
you mean by 11, you know?
No, I mean, but when you think about 11-man football, I mean, for Livonia, this is kind of new territory with them. Union Parish has been a really good football club all season long also.
And for those of you who don't know, Union Parish, that's Farmersville.
Exactly.
Farmersville, that's, again, it used to be Farmersville. They won the title back in 2001, as a matter of fact.
Well, they have a great dual threat quarterback in Jamaris Williams. He does an outstanding job leading that team, so this should be an interesting matchup.
Livonia, they were the #1 seed, but they had it kind of rough in the playoffs. They had 2 real close games. Union Parish,
it wasn't
great
close.
defense and shut out Kaplan and shut out a real good meat team. So I think
you can tell if we were putting money on the game, kind of where we're leaning here with Union Parish. So you and I kind of grew with the same guy. You understand where I'm coming from with that.
They also beat Washita Christian 42-0.
Exactly.
That's, you know,
That's
right there.
impressive.
That's saying something too.
That's
okay,
impressive.
when they beat Washita Christian 42-0. Russell Ferris, big running back for Livonia, had over 200 yards in the semifinal win over Jennings. We want to move on to Class 2A. It is Kinder taking on Manny. Manny, one of my favorite teams, the Tigers. They're the #1 seed. Yeah, I know where Manny is.
I know you know where it's at.
I got a trivia question for you on Manny, by the way.
Give it to me.
They'll take on Kinder. That's a 1 and a 3. Kinder comes in 13-1. And what about it, gentlemen? Class 2A, Manny and Kinder.
Well, Kinder impressed me that they can beat Winfield 28-21, and they got a nice dual threat quarterback with Austin Pickle and Jordan Vickers at running back. They'll do a nice job, but I think everybody wants to see Manny because of Garrett Thomas, the big offensive tackle, will probably be one of the top offensive linemen in the Deep South in the next 2 years. Xavier Davis also, tremendous dual threat quarterback for them.
You talk about Xavier Davis again. He's a special athlete, and that's why they're playing this weekend. One thing we have to look at, the coaching staffs, when you get this deep in the playoffs, you have to have outstanding coaches, and both of these teams do, and that's why they're this deep in the playoffs.
And you mentioned Kinder and Coach Fuselier beat a good Winfield team, but Manny beat a real good Laurelville team that was, I mean, really rolling up the points, 63 and 70 points in the last couple games. So this ought to be
I like this game. I
like
think that's
it
a
too.
good watch game between, I think, 2 teams that are very close personnel-wise, and you know it as well as anybody. It's all about focus at this point now. Can you get your kids focused for an opponent who's every bit as good as you?
Absolutely.
Manny, no state titles, but they've been to the Dome twice in '88 and in '89. And of course, Kinder, they've won 2 state titles, but never been to the Dome because they won them in '67, I think in '78, you know, before there was a Superdome Classic. All right, you ready for my Manny trivia question? What Pro Football Hall of Famer was born in Manny?
Willie Davis.
No. I'll give you a clue. You think he's from Lake Charles. All right, you won't get it. Charlie Joyner was born in Manny. Yep. Charlie Joyner was born in Manny. Yeah, you started to get it, I know. Let's go to 1A. Another good matchup. But then again, all these matchups are really good. Mangum, a #2 seed, 11-2, taking on the Golden Tours of Hahnville, who always seem to be around. Always seem to be here during
like
this
a
time
nap
of
every
year.
time around come
13-0.
championship season.
Yeah, Coach Franklin, you know, you got a second Coach Franklin, and they're still at it.
Both teams run the wing T, so you know what you're going to get. You're going to get a mouthful of running the football. Kendrick Jackson got hurt last week for them. Then all of a sudden, Tyus Early comes in. He rushes for over 200 yards. So this is a really good football team. They beat a good Kentwood team 31-14. And then Mangum, West St. John, they beat. And from where Lou and I are, that's some pretty tall tales there.
And put 56 up on them.
Yeah, beat them 56-24. And, you know, Mangum also 49-0, 56-26. But Hahnville running a wing T, 66-0, 60-14, 31-14.
It looks like Auburn.
So, I mean, you like to say it's a shootout, but it's going to be two wing T teams so that I can throw the football.
It'll also be about
a run out.
Yeah, be an hour-and-a-half football game.
Exactly.
Yeah,
You'll be in and out of there real fast.
I've never seen so many explosive wing T offenses, and this is definitely going to be a game here. It'll be a short game, but it'll be a high-scoring game. And Hahnville averaging over 52 points a game, and that's big time for a wing T.
Hahnville, 15 state titles, the first coming in 1924, the last in 2009. We got one more minute to go, and we got one more matchup. It's Vermilion Catholic taking on St. Frederick's. St. Frederick's is in Monroe. 13-0 Vermilion Catholic, 10-4 St. Frederick's. Gentlemen, what about it?
I was telling JJ this working at the Manning camp. I got to see Brennan Galley, who's a 5'6" quarterback. He's thrown for over 5,000 yards for Vermilion Catholic, and they run the spread offense. They're averaging almost 40 points a game. That's an impressive football team, Vermilion Catholic, and I got to know Brennan a little bit. He's fighting type 1 diabetes, and he's done a great job. And he's going to UL Lafayette, not going to play ball, but a terrific little quarterback.
Okay, so that's the deal in that division. We're going to come back, take a break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about Division III, Hannon and Calvary. Hannon, first time in the Superdome. This is Prep Recruiting Insider from NOLA Motorsports Park, Avondale, Louisiana. Mike Detillier, Lou Valdin, and J.J. McCleskey with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Prep Recruiting Insider from NOLA Motorsports Park. We are at the event center here at this tremendous place, a place for speed, go-karts, come on out. Hey, great place, all sorts of things going on here. I got my trio of experts here with me, Mike Detillier, Lou Valdin, and J.J. McCleskey filling in. Renee Nadeau is not with us this week, but he will be back next week, and this is the championship edition of Prep Recruiting Insider. Don't forget, we got our Ronnie Lamarck, legend of the game, sitting right here for the whole show. We'll talk to him a little bit later about Lou Valdin and what's he been up to and what he is going to do. But there's a lot of football going on in Division III in the Dome, and the matchup is Archbishop Hannon taking on Calvary Baptist. That is a number 2 seed taking on number 4 seed. The road to the Dome, LHSAA. And gentlemen, guess we're going to take a look at that bracket. As you say, this is how Calvary Baptist got there. Guys, was it a easy trip for them?
There's no easy trip for anybody when you get this far down the road. You know, and John Blackman, he's done a great job. Also, you get an opportunity in this football game to watch Shea Patterson, terrific throwing quarterback with commitment to the University of Arizona. What a great story, Lou, on Hannon. You know, what Pat Lambert's done there. He's got an outstanding young quarterback, too, in Corey Ziegler.
Okay, now stop. You guys know Pat Lambert, I'm sure. You got I mean, he was at North. Well, I called it Northeast then, of course. You know, it's Monroe.
UL Monroe
now. And that's so he's been around. How much a difference can that make in a program like this?
A lot of difference. And you're talking about from a schematic standpoint. Anytime you can come down from the college level to the high school level, not to disrespect the high school game, but you're dummying down because the speed of the game slows down. Hannon trains next door to my facility, so I get to see them practice pretty much every day. And I'm going to tell you, I get to talk to Coach Lambert a lot about X's and O's, and this guy's really sharp, one of the better coaches in the state of Louisiana.
Luke, how well do you know Coach Lambert?
I know him fairly well. I mean, he's an excellent coach, and man, he's just done a great job with that football team. The quarterback, 5 touchdowns in 2 games, throws a game winner against the #1 seed, Episcopal. And, you know, you would look on paper, Calvary, because they pretty much rolled into the dome. They beat a Catholic New Iberia team that was really beating up people, so they beat a real good Catholic team. So on paper, you would say Calvary was probably the better football team, but I think you're giving a heck of a football coach 2 weeks to get ready.
Yeah, that's a big part.
That's one of the things I'm going to be interested to see, is with 2 weeks to get ready, how, you know, the games might be a lot closer than they look on paper.
JJ?
Coach, that's a great point. One thing that I've noticed about what Coach Lambert has done with Hannon is he's changed the culture. I mean, and 3 years ago, you probably wouldn't even thought about Hannon even being in the playoffs, much less being in the Superdome. And he's done a great job of the strength program, holding the kids accountable. And the game Friday night, they just beat Episcopal up. They beat them up. They physically took the 2 leading rushers that had over 2,000 yards and beat them up.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, you know, for anybody. When you knock off the #1 seed in the tournament, as Hannon has, you know, I mean, that says something right there. I mean, that's quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, I agree. I think, listen, that gives you a lot of confidence to roll in. And I think when you come down to these games, focus and confidence, I think, plays a lot to do when you get to this show. Because you know what? Everybody's telling you you're great. You're gonna be the champ. But you know what? You 1 game away. So that's where the focus part got to come in.
One thing I like about the situation is Father Charlie, who's the principal at Hannon, promised 3 of the seniors when they were freshmen that if they made it to the Superdome, he would get his hair cut off. And Tuesday, they had a pep rally at the school, and Father Charlie cut his hair off. So again, Coach Lambert has done a great job of changing the culture, and I think, as you said, and as you said as well, I think they'll have a great game plan for him.
Calvert, you mentioned the quarterback, Shea Patterson. We got about a minute left. Talk a little bit about him. Committed to Arizona.
Committed to Arizona, and you know what Arizona runs. So, I mean, you got that spread offense. He'll throw it off the run. He's also a really good athlete, so he can make some plays with his feet. So, improvisation part, and that's where if you Hannon, you have to be gap sensitive here. And don't overplay him, because what happens, you roll up, he throws it downfield, you commit too fast, he takes off downfield. So, I think this is an interesting game between 2 guys that kind of got here a different way, but they've got their teams playing for the big enchilada.
Division III, that's the final. Hannon versus Calvary in the Superdome. Don't be alarmed by that 8-4 Calvary record, because 2 of those losses came against Byrd and Parkway, 2 teams that, you know, we've already talked about one. We're going to talk about another later. So that means they are in the dome. This is Prep Recruiting Insider from NOLA Motorsports Park in Avondale, Louisiana. When we return, we'll talk about, a good one, Division II. Thanks for sticking with us here on our championship edition of PRI, Prep Recruiting Insider from NOLA Motorsports Park. We are at the Event Center. Joining me this week, Mike Detillier, Lou Valdin, and JJ McCleskey, our esteemed panel of experts. All right, Division II. This is one of them I think people have been looking toward for most of the season. I think you guys would agree, you know, and we're talking about John Curtis, the Patriots, taking on University Lab. Well, that was that bracket there in Division III.
All I can tell you is John Curtis has walked down this aisle before, along with the 25 state championships. And you know, when everybody talks about their offense with Malachi Dupree, they got great running backs. But Lou and I were talking about this. They're scoring 35 points a game, but that defense, I mean, that defense has been awesome. And what you got, maybe 5 or 6 Division I scholarship players on that team. Lou, University High is talented. I'm not sure they've ever seen anything of what they've seen on the defensive side for Curtis.
No, and I mean, you think of University High School, you think of Dylan Moses, you think of Nick Brosette, the 2 running backs. But, you know, Curtis, they played East St. John. Curtis played Speedy Knoll. Curtis played Fournette, and those guys are a little bit better than average backs. So I think, Curtis has played some pretty good running backs this year. I just look at them defensively. I think they're better defensively this year than they were last year.
So you're saying defensively they are seasoned? Is that what you're saying?
Talented, which is really good when you seasoned and talented.
People, Curtis' special teams are flawless.
Yeah.
If you punt, and a lot of people punt to Curtis, they have the best punt return in America. I mean, so everything they do is just perfect almost. And JT does a great job. Like I said, this is his first rodeo. They expect to be there. I think Curtis wins this one.
Yeah, I think so.
Now, we were talking during the break where JT said this was his most talented team. I disagree with you. Last year's Curtis team was his most talented team, but this one ain't bad. They got some people still there.
But on defense, I think you can put up a pretty good argument that this year is better than a year ago. One thing with University Lab is all the prospects they have. Also, Garrett Brunfield, who's a big offensive lineman who's going to LSU. And what Coach brought up, Dylan Moses, Nick Brosette at running back, Trey Jackson, running a wide receiver defensive back, who's already committed to Florida. Their offensive line is good. I think that's the matchup I want to see. Curtis's defensive line against a really good University Lab offensive line. You don't win in the trenches against Curtis, you got no shot.
I agree with you. This is an interesting matchup. This is probably the most talented matchup from both sides where you're going to see a bunch of guys going on to college to play. But one thing that I like, as Coach Valdo said, is the schedule that John Curtis play. We talk about the 25 state championships, but the schedule, St. Thomas Aquinas in the Dome this year. So again, this is a seasoned team. They've been there. I don't think U-High have played the tough game yet. And I think those guys, that they're talented. Can Manny Miles get it done against that defense?
Well, one of the things is this isn't a best of 7. So what you hope is that maybe Curtis doesn't play their best that night. Right. Because it's a one-game season. And those things can happen. Lou, you've been in that situation where you've had teams more talented than maybe your state championship team, but didn't win it.
Absolutely.
You weren't at your best that particular one game, and it's not the best of 7.
And I was fortunate in 2003, we caught Evangel. They didn't play them best.
Yeah.
I have a lot of respect for Evangel, and Curtis beat Evangel 40-6. So I don't bet against JT in his house.
Dylan Moses made a big splash this year nationally because he was a 9th grader that was offered and accepted and that sort of thing. How good is he?
Athletically, you know who he reminds me of? A young Brandon Jacobs. I saw Brandon at Assumption High School, a big, tall running back, almost run straight up.
Yeah.
And he reminded me of Brandon. I never forget watching Brandon play returning punts.
Yeah.
Now, you got 150-pound kids running down, and here, Brandon Jacobs at 15, 16 years old was like 230 pounds. You got to have some big coconuts to try to grab Brandon Jacobs out in the open field. Dylan Moses reminds me a lot of a young Brandon Jacobs.
He reminds me of Rodney Hampton. I had this guy in the Nike Combine, the Sparks, and this guy, when he puts on his outfit, he definitely meets the eyeball test. So again, you got a guy that is as a freshman, probably has over 20 offers right now, and this guy can just flat out play. I think it was a stretch of 3 games, he had over 20 tackles, so he's a beast at linebacker. So be interesting to see him against that offense of John Curtis.
I haven't seen him play. I'm looking forward to seeing him play, but the only other guy I know that got offered that early was Fournette, and I've seen him a couple times.
You've seen him way too many times. That's the problem, Lou.
So,
the quarterback at University that you guys mentioned has a familiar last name, Manny Miles.
He's a very talented quarterback. He's a dual-purpose guy. He can make some plays, certainly with his feet. But when you have that type running game, you hoping that he can make a few plays via the air. I think this is the type game that, against that secondary, how many plays is he going to make there? I think this might be a big game. If they're going to test Hunter Dale, who's really one of the top juniors out in the state and almost in the country, you might say, at that safety position. Are you going to test that secondary? To beat Curtis, you got to be able to throw the football a little bit. You can't just run the football on him.
One thing that I'm impressed with John Curtis is from a schematic standpoint, they do a great job of disguising their coverages. This would definitely be the best secondary that Manny Miles has faced. And this could go down as one of the best secondaries probably in the history of the state of Louisiana, because you have guys at every position that will play on Saturdays.
When you think about that, 4 players in the secondary, all going to be Division I scholarship, man, Lou, we sitting in the wrong place as far as recruiting is concerned.
All right, this is Prep Recruiting Insider. Okay, Detillier, where are these people going? You got all these names written down here. Come on, where's Alexander going? Come on, tell me, man.
I think everybody is worried about Malachi Dupree.
Where's Malachi going? Where's Kenny Young going?
I think Kenny Young goes to LSU, and I think Malachi Dupree goes to LSU.
I agree with you.
Really?
Yes. I agree with you.
I think both of them go there. But listen, Curtis is going to have about 10 guys off that team sign scholarships. But again, you got a very talented university lab team, and I'm only saying, I think everybody here agrees that we'll probably would pick John Curtis, but it is a one game.
Yeah.
It's not the best of the seven. All it takes is one.
JJ?
John Curtis has so much depth. Your backup receiver doesn't have over 20 catches. It's committed to Houston. I mean, that shows you just how many playmakers you have. And again, take my hat off to Coach Curtis because he does a fine job with his program, and he definitely is who he is.
Division II final. It is John Curtis taking on U-High University Lab from Baton Rouge. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back where we'll deal with Division I. Yep, that's a big one also. This is Prep Recruiting Insider from NOLA Motor Sports Park with Mike Detillier, Lou Valdin, and JJ McCleskey. Championship edition of Prep Recruiting Insider from NOLA Motor Sports Park. Don't forget our legend of the game, Lou Valdin, has been here with us for the entire hour. Legend of the game is sponsored by Lamarck Ford. Ronnie Lamarck, a legend, some say in his own mind, but he was a legend in his time, okay? Yeah, what are you laughing at, Mike? Yeah, you know, Ronnie played for Coach Nuss down in Chalmette.
You got that way of words. You always kind of make me chuckle a little bit. Roosevelt.
You got that.
Roosevelt.
You got that. We call each other, I call him Mikey, he calls me Roosevelt, but that's a long story. We won't get into that. It's also going to be could be a long story for the Division I championship. This is another good matchup. The Rummel Raiders are there. They won the 5A title last year, of course, over Barb in the final, and they will be taking on Bird. Jay Roth and the Raiders moved along, got the big win over St. Augustine. They beat Jesuit. You know, it's kind of like a Catholic League tournament to get to the final. But here they are, the Raiders.
A lot of people were shocked that they beat St. Aug.
You weren't? I was.
No, I'll be honest, because most people thought with Leonard Fournette in that situation.
I wasn't shocked.
Again, you got to give him more touches in that game. That's another story. But I think really Jay Roth, does anybody get more out of less talent-wise than Jay Roth? He does an unbelievable job coaching, putting that team in a position. But, you know, he's got a sophomore quarterback in Chase Fourcade who's made it happen via the air. And last week we saw him run with the football for the first time. And so that was a little unusual. I don't know, maybe his Uncle John was trying to teach him what to do with the ball every once in a while. I'm not trying to say that's what happened. But he's got also a great receiver in Stephen Dunbar.
Jay Roth doesn't like to talk about it a lot, but as a player, high school player and a coach against St. Aug, I think he is like 19-3. Or 16-3.
He never had to play against Leonard Fournette, and I think that's why everybody thought St. Aug would be in this contest.
Well, we played Rummel in week 2.
Yeah.
And I think it was after that game, late in that game, they put Fourcade in, and he's made a difference. He's kind of opened it up a little bit, and he heard St. Aug running, like what Mike said. He heard, and he kept drives alive and made first downs and things like that. And I think you look at Bird. Bird's a wing tee, option type team. They don't like to throw the football at all. I mean, Coach Suggs, he just soon play football with a brick. And but they have a lot of speed. But when you look at Rummel's secondary and how good they are, you're not going to pop outside on the Raiders. And you give Coach Jackalord, who's a tremendous defensive coordinator, again, 2 weeks to get ready. And this was a team that Rummel played last year in the playoffs, so they're familiar with Bird. So, you know, I think Rummel's going to be in great shape.
Yeah, I agree. I think in this spot here with Bird, I think they kind of caught in between here with a Rummel team getting at their peak as a football team and a sophomore quarterback and I brought up the fact that he was always a good passer,
Right.
but now the threat of the run has made them an even better football team.
You need to mention also that running back Keith Fulton came back for the St. Aug game, and he wasn't around before. That was very important also.
I
AJ?
think the big difference looking at this Rummel team is when Coach Roth, who I think, and I have a lot of respect for Coach Roth, when he took the R's off the helmets, he sent his team a message that this is not, it's not about entitlement. Because you're playing at Rummel, we won the state championship last year, we've been there, this going on 3 now the last 5 years. He took the R, and when he did that, I think it changed the dynamics of the team. Now you get Keith Fulton back. This Bird team is an exciting team, like Coach Bird said. I mean, they do not want to pass the ball at all. I'm looking forward to this game because I think that this game will be a chess match. I think that Bird will have to come up with different things because they will not be able to move the ball down the field. And again, Coach Roth, Coach Lambert, definitely 2 of the better coaches in the state, and they both deserve co-coach of the year.
You know, I asked this to Lou. When you've won one and always the knock, maybe you hadn't won the big game, so to speak, in that spot, then you win last year. It's a lot easier, I think, the second time. It's hard to win it one time. I know it's hard to win it the second time, but from a confidence standpoint of the kids who had been there, I think it gives you that deal of, I'm not carrying that weight of never having won it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you look every year that the same teams get there and get there and get there because they know what it takes to get there. And if you haven't been in the Dome and you haven't played in that Superdome Classic, you don't know how awesome it is. And so, you know, the kids that get there, I mean, you just want to get there year in and year out. And, you know right off the bat, that's your goal. You set your season, not to get in the playoffs, not to win the district championship. You set your, you're like Acadiana. Playoff time is your time.
Right.
Your season depends on getting to the Superdome.
You know, that's one thing I was going to ask both of you guys. We see all these teams kind of all go in almost every year. And we use the term system football, but it's perfection of system football, what all of them do. If you're talking about JT, you're talking about Jay Roth, what Ted Davidson has done at Acadiana. These guys perfect this at a certain level, and the parts change, but yet the machine keeps rolling.
Yep, the Franklins must be doing something.
Yeah. They do a great job. Yeah. They have a philosophy. They have a system. But the big thing is they get the kids to buy into the system. And that's the big difference. I think the kids believe in what they're doing at Rummel. They believe in obviously what they do at Curtis. And I think that's the selling point, is the fact that, this is our philosophy. This is what we're going to do. And we're not going to change with the times. This is what we believe in. And the kids buy into that.
One thing to go along with that statement, not only are you mastering that system, but you play the early schedule against tough teams to make sure that team, that year, is able to run through that cycle. And I think these teams, you have to give the coaches credit because they play that tough preseason schedule.
And when you have a system, now, and your offense doesn't change based on who you have personnel-wise, that sort of thing. Now your young kids are playing in that system. So you're able, your freshman team, your JV team, they're brought up playing in that system, so they just keep reloading every single year.
The one thing I do know, Ro, you'll see more red in this football game than you saw when UL Lafayette played San Diego State. I mean, when you're going to look out in that crowd and see all that Rummel red, you say, man, did UL Lafayette come to play in the Dome like a week earlier? Because, I mean, one thing, they support the Rummel pride, Raider pride, they support that football team.
And you mentioned the Rummel secondary, how good it is. Excuse me, a couple of Razorback commitments in there, and a really fine young player, a 10th grader.
Exactly.
And Kirsten Fulton. Yeah,
Eugene and Tolliver both going to Arkansas, so you got a pretty good secondary there.
Yeah, Bird, one of their outstanding running backs, he's kind of playing hurt. Lewis Mills, he's going to, Coach Suggs says he's going to play, but he's kind of had a shoulder injury too. So. Yeah.
We're going to take a break right here. It ought to be quite a matchup in Division I. When we come back, we'll talk about Class 4A, East Jeff and Carr. Welcome back. Prep Recruiting Insider. So glad to have our cadre of analysts and experts here. J.J. McCleskey, Lou Valdin, and Mike Detillier. Guys, thanks for joining us here on Prep Recruiting Insider. All right, Class 4A. You know, this is the one game that I might not be able to see, but it's the one game I really, really wanted to see. And we're talking about East Jefferson undefeated against the Cougars of Carr, defending state 4A champions.
You know, I think a lot of people were shocked that East Jefferson would get into this game because of who they had to play. Neville, who has walked down that aisle many times to get to this game. You know, the thing about it with Edna Carr is the great story. Jabbar Jaluk leaves, goes to Louisiana Tech as an assistant coach. Nathaniel Jones comes in, got a lot of talent. You got the man himself, Speedy Noel at quarterback, Gerald Willis along the defensive line, 12-1 this season. But the story, you know, locally, it's got to be what Coach Nick has done at East Jeff.
Absolutely.
A 14-0 football team. Yep. I don't think anybody before this prep season started could have predicted that team would be where they're at today.
Oh, no, that's an outstanding job. That's really the story of this football season. What Nick's been able to do at East Jefferson. When's the last time they won a playoff game? Maybe in the 70s with Mike Molly. So, you know, it's and they're going to have a shot. You know, people people underestimate them. Everyone's writing them off, saying Carr's going to win a football game. But if they can run the option offense, they can do what Acadiana's going to try to do to Parkway. Limit Carr's possessions. Now, the problem is Carr's very, very talented on defense. And they played a pretty good option team early in the year in Curtis. So they have an idea how to defend that sort of thing.
Lots of people on their front seven, huh, JJ?
Well, East Jefferson has Ronald Green and Eugene Wells, so that gives them a chance. But because Carr's front seven is pretty much an NCAA football team,
or close to it,
or close to it, I think the importance in this matchup, sometimes you get a bad matchup, and in my opinion, I think this for East Jefferson, I think this is a bad matchup. I just think that they can man up on the outside. They have cornerbacks that's going to college as well at Carr. I think that they can put 9 in the box and you're going to have to just run it down my throat. And I just don't know if East Jefferson's line is that good to do that to Gerald Willis and those guys. I mean, linebackers are outstanding. I watched Carr play 2 or 3 times this year, and they do a great job of playing physical and running to the ball.
He's talking about Donnie Alexander, tremendous linebacker, and Javon Williams at defensive end. But I think for East Jeff to win this game, you got to limit Carr's possessions. You cannot give them the football right back because you know with Speedy, he's going to get them downfield. He's going to make plays for you. So I think the big key here is you got to get some turnovers. And you got to limit Carr's possessions in these games because if not, you're not going to be able to keep up with the scoring kind of blitz that Edna Carr is going to give you.
And, you know, Carr's defense just tremendous. Everyone talks about Speedy Noel, but, you know, they've given up 13 points in 4 playoff games. The last 2 games were shutouts. They shut out Landry Walker, an unbelievably talented football team. But you're right. You know, East Jeff's going to have to just burn the clock. They probably get to watch a 25-second clock and snap it with a few seconds on it and just try to keep it close, shorten the game, and have a shot to win. Now, Carr blew everybody out in the playoffs, and East Jeff's been in a couple shootouts with Warren Easton, with Bell Chase. They had a tight one with Carr. I mean, with Neville, they won in the last one. So the one event, you know, at least they've played for 48 minutes.
They're battle tested.
They're battle tested. They're not going to quit, and they're not going to give up. They're going to fight for 4 quarters.
Jay?
East Jefferson hasn't faced a team that has had a Batman and Robin. And what I mean by that is Glenn Irons. We talk about Speedy Noel, but who was the district MVP? Glenn Irons. He had a great season. Again, here's another kid that has several scholarship offers. And I think he's the key to their success. He's been the key to their success all year.
Well, let me ask you this for all 3 of you. Is Carr a better team with Taylor playing quarterback?
Absolutely.
I think so.
Absolutely.
You know, as opposed to Speedy taking the snap and taking off?
Well, I know he tried to do that in the past. I mean, that's how they, 2 years ago, we played him, and we watched him in the scrimmage, and Speedy was at receiver. We watched him against St. Aug in the Jamboree. Speedy was at receiver. We didn't play week 1 because of the hurricane, so the first time we got to see him again we play Carr. All of a sudden, Speedy's at quarterback. We ready to double cover him. And the first
And you
play,
couldn't triple cover.
yeah, the first play, he earned his nickname.
And he's taking a snap and taking off, right?
Because you can
so
see.
much for that game plan.
That one went out the door. But, you know, and not trying to put the cart before the horse here, he is really Odell Beckham. You know, when you look at him as an athlete, he is Odell Beckham in that his position in college football, he's going to be a wideout. But I think, you know, as a punt returner, as a wide receiver, he is Beckham. And I agree with you, Ro, that I think with Kerry Taylor, he gives you the options to do so many things with Speedy No. But the other part, too, is, man, when you're following a guy like Jabbar Jalou, the kind of pressure Nathaniel Jones is under, too. This is his first year. You getting handed Gerald Willis and Speedy No and Taylor and what you brought up certainly by Glenn Irons. All those guys you given, man, that's a lot of pressure on you as a coach. Don't mess it up.
All right, we know we've talked about all the prospects there at Carr, but, you know, what about people at EJ, you know, some prospects?
Well,
what about Eugene Wells? I mean, there's a guy who's an option guy, you know, and you don't have much of that anymore. What's going to happen with him?
I think he's probably a second-tier type school team. I think probably a middle-range type school is going to get him. I'm impressed so much with Ronald Green, though, also, because he can throw the football, run with the football real well. He runs on that read option, does a great job with it. And on defensive side of the football, Edgar Jackson, outstanding football player for him. And Jamal Veazey, also, very, very good football player. So you're talking about talent against talent here. And when you have that, I just think when you have so much offensive talent that Carr has, if they get the football a few more times than you, they end up winning. That defense is good enough, I think, maybe to do it. I agree with you, JJ. The matchup here, I think, swings toward Edna Carr. But the coaching matchups, to me, is the most intriguing because I think in this spot with Nick and his team being there for the first time, you're kind of playing with house money here. Nobody's expecting us to win. All the pressure's on Edna Carr and how they handle that also.
You know, and Nick's got to be patient. You know, even if he gets behind, he's got to be patient and stay with his plan. Run the ball, run the option. You know, try to burn clock. And
so my question, as we've ended all the segments, you know, so where are these people going to school? You're supposed to know this stuff, man.
Well, you want to know about Speedy Nolan, Gerald Willis? I think, again, I think LSU finishes strong. And I think they end up getting both Speedy and Gerald Willis. And I know everybody's going to say, well, because of Gerald's half-brother, basically, and then Collins going to Alabama, he'll end up there. Who knows who'll be the head coach at Alabama at that time? That'll be the other part of it, because you know that Texas job might come open. So Lou, I know you're unemployed right now.
That's what I was going to say.
It might be a situation for you.
Lou Valdin.
Well, I might, if you know,
I kind of stunned him a little bit. I'm sorry about that.
Everybody was saying Coach Saban was going to Texas, but since he heard the Hahnville job's open, he may go. So that'll open up Alabama and Texas for me.
There you go.
That's pretty good. Jovan Williams, too, the defensive end outside linebacker going to Oklahoma State. And boy, had they been a team that has really recruited this area extremely hard and come up with some players, they stole one out of LSU's backyard in the running back.
Well, it ought to be quite a matchup in Class 4A, Edna Carr versus East Jefferson. We'll take a break right here, and we'll come back and close it out with a decommit. This is Prep Recruiting Insider from NOLA Motorsports Park. There you have it, NOLA Motorsports Park, 11075 Nicole Boulevard, Avondale, Louisiana, 504-302-4875. NOLA Motorsports Park, the place for speed. You like karting? Come on out, rent one of those karts. Everybody likes to do that. At least the kids really seem to do that.
I want to do that too.
You want to do that too, huh? Mike Detillier, Lou Valdin, and JJ McCleskey have been with us here on NOLA, at NOLA Motorsports Park on Prep Recruiting Insider. We got a decommit, a big decommit recently.
Yeah, Darrell Williams decommitted from Arizona State and committed to LSU on a verbal commitment. And no surprise there. When you look, and Lou can talk a little bit about this, they're going to lose Alfred Blue. You're going to lose Jeremy Hill. You're going to lose Kenny Hilliard early to the NFL draft. Darrell Williams reminds me so much when I watch him run. He looks like Stephen Ridley. coming out of Trinity Episcopal High School in Mississippi. Former linebacker, quarterback, and guess what? Darryl did a lot of that too. He's a north-south guy. He's a very physical runner, underrated for what he can do after he breaks loose a little bit. But 1,615 yards of his over 2,000 came after first contact. He's exactly what Les Miles wants, and I think it'll be Thunder 1, Thunder 2. Darryl Williams, Leonard Fournette.
And he was on Prep Recruiting Insider several weeks ago and was firm at the time of his commitment, but he may not have had the, I was going to say the offer. May not have had the offer really from LSU at that time.
I think that's what he was waiting on.
That's what he was waiting on, no doubt about it. The hour has gone by quickly, gentlemen. You've been outstanding, as you always are. Filling in for Renee Nato, J.J. McCleskey on the far end right there. JJ, thanks for being with us.
Appreciate you having me.
Lou, you got a future in television, my man.
Oh, I hope so. Right now, I'm not coaching.
You got a future in television, my man. You know. Mike Detillier, you got a future in television too.
Thank you, Roosevelt. I appreciate that.
This has been Prep Recruiting Inside. I want to thank J.J. McCleskey, Lou Valdin, and Mike Detillier again. Thank you also, Ronnie Lamarck, sponsor of our Legends of the Game. We're from NOLA Motorsports Park. Gotta go. We'll see you next time.